is the September 25th study session of the City Council, And we have full council here. We're going to be doing a follow-up and wrap-up of the 2019 budget. So we'll have, Tiffany, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Good evening, Council. Tonight we're going to kind of follow up to our 2019 budget presentations that we had a couple of weeks ago. I just wanted to let all of you know that Mark and the staff in the city has kind of met over the last few weeks, and we think we found a solution to all of our budget problems.
Oh. Wow. I want what you guys have.
Do you donate?
All of you have a solution.
Just chocolate. Can't mess with chocolate.
So happy early Halloween. We have some chocolate there for you.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
I don't know if it's milk or dark chocolate. Could be both.
Gotta give it
A little bit. So just wanted to start the night off with a little bit of humor. So cheapest way to fix all of our problems is chocolate, right? So, all right, now to the fun stuff. Okay, so this evening we have a pretty tight schedule. We have several items on our agenda. We also added a couple of things that we want to talk about related to parking lot items and a couple of things that have come up in the last few days. We'll talk about local partnership funding. We're going to mention that administrative support information. We're going to give you an update on that. We're going to talk about some special events, some in-kind services that the city provides for multiple organizations throughout the city during the year. We're going to talk about our cost of service study that we're working on, and then we're going to revisit some parking lot items from the Tuesday and Wednesday meetings that we had previously. And then I'm just going to kind of remind you of principles of sound financial management and where that's going to be headed in the future. The first thing that we're going to discuss tonight is local partnership funding. This used to be called nonprofit discretionary grants. This is a budget that council has each year that applications are submitted to the city from multiple organizations throughout the Littleton area, asking council for support in their functions and their services that they provide to Littleton residents and others through their organizations. So in 2019, we have 25 applications. There was 135,700 in grant requests. There were also 6 that requested in-kind services, so staff time helping with a certain event or service, maybe some overtime related to the police department, things of that nature. And then we had some new funding in 2019 as well. And I believe in your packets you have a list of the local partnership funding recommendations. And then you also have some policy recommendations. So we do want to look at the way that we visit these requests every year. And we've reached out to other cities and kind of looked at what process they have. And so we put together some policy recommendations for council to review and look at, and we're just asking for direction if you support the recommendations and moving forward into the 2020 budget year, if there's changes with the process that we would like to make. So with that, I would actually like to visit the list that you have before you that talks about what agencies have requested funding and look at staff's recommendation for 2019. And I'll mention the 2018 budget was $86,300, and based on the information and applications that came through, staff is recommending that we fund $91,300, so it is a $5,000 increase. There's a couple of reasons why. One in particular, we had a new request this year from Cycling Without Age Littleton. And their original request was $10,000, and after reviewing the information, it was decided that we recommend that we require a match from that organization, so the city would fund $5,000, provided that the entity matches or collects the $5,000 to match that. So that's something that's a little different this year. We haven't done that in the past. So I think Other than that particular thing, there was some new funding requests from some organizations like Break Bread, and then Family Tree requested, and then Graceful Foundation. So a couple of new ones, but essentially the previous ones are the same as we funded in the previous years. So I don't know if you've had time to look over this, if you have questions on particular applications or organizations. We have Kelly here, who has worked with us closely in the past, and then Sam is here as well to help.
So I actually wanted to take a look at the policy, and the question I have is, this new policy that you are proposing, was this used in helping to determine which of these qualified or not? Or is it still iterative in nature? Because I really do feel that I'd like to really take a look at this next year. I know that for this year we've kind of gone with more or less the same process, same form, same application. But next year I really think we need to look at why we're doing it, what we're trying to achieve, and be very aligned to what the council goals and objectives are, just like we hold ourselves accountable to all of the decisions that we make in the budget. And I didn't see that very clearly right now. I also want to ensure that we get more towards how does this become something that's much more sustainable and become more of an enabler for these various organizations to be successful and potentially even stand on their own. So I know, Sama, that you've done a lot of work on this, but I think there are some things that we're seeing out in the community that we can maybe learn from. Some of the things that I've heard from reaching out to nonprofits is volunteers are really hard to come by and to keep. And it's also, there are a lot of small nonprofits that are trying to figure out how to do it. So how do they learn from others, or how do they join forces so they can make a bigger impact? So that connectivity even amongst the nonprofits. And then the third being the actual clients that they're serving. Those clients knowing what's available, how to get there, etc. So there seem to be various different opportunities for some of these organizations to become more successful, which means that they provide greater services to our community. So I really would like us to continue to work on this going into next year. Volunteer Connect out of Douglas County is something to begin to look at.
Peggy?
So all of these requests are great, but I'm having difficulty with us spending more than we did in the past, or even as much as we did when we were telling the citizens we have a major challenge, street improvement, the needed street improvements, and that we're even considering asking for a sales tax increase to help get more money. I know the country's not in a major crisis. I know the state's not in a major crisis. We're not in a major crisis, but we're not in a position we were when we did the previous funding. And I'm really torn on this. I'm inclined to not want to fund several of these things, and not this year, and not give any increases except possibly to one or two. So I'd really love to hear from the other folks here.
Carol?
I'll go along with that, what both of the council members said. First of all, the need to look at what it is we're doing and what we're trying to do and for how long. And then, is this really our priority when we are saying, again and again, we don't have enough money to do our basic responsibilities, such as streets. I think that number one, preference to programs historically supported by the city it seems like we're creating a pattern of dependency where our philosophy is to continue supporting the ones we have supported, whereas a couple of the comments here was we would preferably want to support a group to help it get going and then wean it off, I would think. The increasing the amount of money doesn't make sense to me. I don't hear a good reason to do that. And then the idea of adding $5,000 for that program that we had presented to us bothers me because in our preferences here we have programs that historically supported, no. Items with the greatest community impact, no. I think the target is a few people who are confined to nursing homes, so that's a very limited audience. Items with the greatest community impact, I don't see that as having a huge impact in any way. And the highest number of participants, not many participants at all. Established service providers within the city, no. So I think that program doesn't fit any of our criteria for preference. So it certainly doesn't make sense. Even though we had a former council member come in and pitch it, it still doesn't make sense to add it since it doesn't meet any of the criteria.
Just a clarification on that. These are recommendations from staff. These are not criteria that's been adopted by council.
Well, I still like them.
Okay.
They make sense to me since we don't have any others. Or
Yeah.
we have others.
No, I think this particular aspect of the budgeting has always been, it's one of those things we do it because we've always done it, and we do it the way we've done it because we've always done it that way. And I think it is, it's over the last couple of years, we've been somewhat frustrated by it, and we've cut some cut some things out. We've brought some different ones in, and so there's been a little bit of shifting going on. I think that the recommendation to create a better, stronger process around this it's mandatory. We have to do it. We cannot look at these charities, these people that are nonprofits that are supporting 1, 2, 3, or 1,000 people in our community and judge them based on anything that is less than a agreed upon criteria group. I think we also need to, I agree with Peggy in terms of the dollar amount. We need to determine a dollar amount and work out of that and not have the requests come in and then we edit it down to whatever. I mean, it's all arbitrary. None of it matches back to anything. I think that this is ours. This is not staff's. This is our money to spend and to do with as we choose. And so it's now incumbent upon us to create that process around it and to really create a program that we can support. This year, I will tell you, I think that we kind of got the toothpaste out of the tube, so to speak. The applicants have applied. They have been told that this is what we're going to do. They've sent in their applications. Months and months ago. So I think that we do need to run through this list and make a decision about which ones and how much. Staff has given us a recommendation. We have what was requested. We have what we did last year and the year prior. So in past years, what we've done is we've gone around the table and just kind of one by one asked council, are you willing to support this and at what level? And it's not as painful as it sounds. There's a lot more consensus there's only a couple where you have a lot less consensus. So other than that, unless somebody else. Yeah, and it doesn't actually take that long to do. There tends to be agreement pretty quickly. Jerry and then Carol.
Yeah, this has always been a tough one for me too, because we're giving away the citizens' money. This isn't our money. If they want to give to any one of these organizations, citizens can give as much as they want. And as Councilwoman Cole said, we're asking for more money, and I'm concerned that we're increasing. At least one of the years since I've been on council, we did not allocate all the funds. We did kind of pigeonhole it. We kept it aside. I don't know if we ever did anything before allocating it, but we did do that. I do like, Tiff and Mark, I do like the analysis that you did on the in-kind. In the past, we haven't had that. Now we really have a vision of what it does cost to do these things, which is good. Yeah, so I'm struggling a little bit with increasing the amount. I'm okay with actually lowering the amount and do it the same way we've done every year. We go through every item. Yeah, we definitely have those that we have done year after year for various reasons. But yeah, I'm all for going one by one first.
It's really not that painful, Carol.
It's a pretty quick thing.
It is.
You were commenting that this, all of you folks who have been on council a while, that this has been kind of a problem for a while. Could we tonight agree to stop doing this in the future? This is the last year. Put out notice to those who are used to receiving funds from us in this way. This is your last year, because we aren't doing this anymore. Any appetite for that?
But
Not tonight.
not doing this or not doing it this way?
Making this, going ahead doing whatever it is we're doing tonight for this year, but at the same time to, I don't know what that is called.
New process.
That we
Kill it.
kill it.
I would suggest
I don't want to use that word. That we
eliminate.
That we discontinue our practice of giving money to nonprofits.
I would suggest that is an option, without a doubt. There may be consensus on that. I would offer this up, Council. We will be doing a retreat. We don't need to make that decision tonight, so we will be doing a retreat in January. Let's put this on the list. Let's put together, let's have staff work on options for us in terms of the recommendations we have here. If we did eliminate it, if we did limit it to 5, what would those 5 be? What would that dollar, what are some options? And then at our retreat, we can align that with our goals that we're going to come up with, align that with our key initiatives or whatever that we end up with at the retreat. And if they don't align, then we make that decision. And if they do align, then we're comfortable with that decision. I think that some thought to it will benefit our decision making on this. Is everybody okay with doing that?
Yes. What category, if this were being priority-based budgeting, would this be in there?
This would be a program for priority-based budgeting.
Okay.
Yes, it is a program.
Okay. So I think that will weed itself out to a certain extent.
Yeah, it'll definitely help. So what we'll do is we'll go through and Kelly, do you want to do the board? It's always easier.
Sure. Well, I have it. I'm trying to get it on the screen.
She's trying to pull it up off the computer. So
Oh, yeah,
see
because
it
we
live.
always did it electronically.
Spreadsheets. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how to work this computer, evidently.
Sam, can you help Eric
I'm working on it.
make the jump? Oh, okay. Yeah, give us
It's on
just a
my
second.
screen. I don't know why you can't see it.
Here's the man.
For the rescue.
Somebody keeps listening to her.
Mark, can I ask you you sent us an email about the grant that we did not get for the
Yes.
immigrant services. So that almost becomes part of this conversation because where we relied on grant funding, we now do not have that. So you are already allocating some funding to that we didn't expect. And should we take that into consideration here and maybe even cut more?
Well, there are several parking lot issues, including traffic calming, that we got towards the end of this discussion. And so we've got some financial plans, the constrained general fund, so you can kind of see the effects of all that. So I guess the short answer is yes, your decisions here probably might influence that. Personally, I would recommend that, just as the mayor described, you probably just march through all that and make some decisions there to kind of hold that at bay and then get to the end of this other discussion to kind of confirm at the very end that this is exactly what you want to do.
What was the amount that we now need to fund the Immigrant Resource Center?
It is $125,000 in 2019, and I think
30.
$30,000 for the balance of the year.
So 155.
So that,
Is that the total?
the balance of this year?
Yes, the grant runs out here the end of September this month. It's on a federal calendar, years why. So that's why there's funding that's necessary after September.
So how much was that this year?
30,000 in 2018.
30?
30.
And in 2019, the net would be 125,000. It's a 2-year grant at 250,000. So 1 year would be 125.
So we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Yeah. Can you make that bigger?
That whole plus.
You make it bigger.
Yeah, look at that.
There she goes. I can't see it on the
That's pretty good.
Okay, so council, what I would suggest we do is first make a determination if we want to, there's consensus to donate to that particular organization. And then if there is, I would say if someone has a number different, then let's go off of staff's recommendation. If someone has a number different than staff, tell us what that number is and we'll have a conversation or consensus or alternatives.
Is it an easier approach to just identify the ones that we wouldn't support?
Or vice versa.
That's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah.
We got to go through the list.
All right.
These are not in the order we've got.
I think it should be.
Yeah, the first one is Love Inc. Is everybody okay supporting Love Inc.?
That's not.
So Peggy,
That's not.
there is a spreadsheet.
Yes, it is.
What's that for?
Yes, it is.
Oh, DBA, it's a DBA, I see, okay, got it.
So,
Squint harder, it'll help.
God, these don't help.
No.
The LASIK's wearing off. Okay, so everybody's okay with Love Inc. $2,500? Okay.
Yeah, that's the same as last year, good.
All Health Network, everybody okay? If you're not okay, just give me your hand.
Yes, good.
100,000 or 10,000? Arapahoe Community College Foundation.
I have a question with that one. ACC has a hell of a lot of students who don't live in Littleton. I'm not, now, we're talking to somebody who taught there 35 years, and I love that college, but I'm not totally confident about giving money that may not go to Littleton residents. So maybe we can qualify that.
It did say 4,200 students. It did say the residents, Littleton served last year, 4,200. But that's just the population, I presume.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is with condition that the funds go to a Littleton resident.
Right, right.
I don't know that we can condition that. This is money that they use for student scholarships. I know that we do participate in some other activities. We buy tables at some of their events and things like that, which also add to support. So I would be okay eliminating this. Peggy, would you?
I'd be comfortable eliminating it.
Pat?
Unfortunately, I'm not that well versed as what exactly that does, that foundation, so.
Scholarship.
It's just straight scholarships, that all is, okay. At 1,500, I'd be okay keeping that there. I maybe see All Health get knocked down a little bit, but.
I prefer 1,500, but I'd be okay with it not there.
Jerry?
1,500 would work for me.
Do you want to keep it there?
Same as last year.
Okay, Carol.
I'm okay with taking it out.
I'm okay with keeping it in.
Kyle?
To split the difference, I would do 1,000.
Keep it in at 1,000?
Do we have a second?
No.
I think I think that's a fair compromise because it's starting to set an example that we are scrutinizing this to a greater degree, and I think it's fair to
So we're at
even
1,000?
begin to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it 1,000.
They should.
Okay, Arapahoe County Foundation, Arapahoe County Mayors and Commissioners, $500.
Yes.
Okay. Youth Program Award. Wait, no, Arapahoe House. Sorry, Arapahoe House.
Actually,
Nothing on
They
there.
request.
Yep, they've gone out of business essentially. Arapahoe Rescue Patrol, $1,500.
What's this? I don't remember this one.
Arapahoe Rescue Patrol, they are a group of volunteers. They're teenagers essentially. And they show up every time we need them. They've shown up on trail events. They showed up when we had those 3 homes that caught fire. And they help with crowd control. They help haul hoses. They bring in water. They do everything and anything. I will tell you, I will advocate for this group. They are incredible.
I went to 2,000, I'm good with.
You're at 2? Okay, 2 or 15? Staff's at 15.
I'm at 15. I'm good with 15.
It was 15.
Okay, 15. Arapahoe Santa Claus Shop. I have a question, and Kelly, you may be able to answer this. In the past, this thing has been stuttering. It's been moving around. It's kind of homeless. And can you give us an update on, because I didn't really extract a lot of it out of their ask.
I don't know the answer. I know that they have been struggling to find a semi-permanent location. I don't know where they are based out of at this point in time. I know that they do reach out to schools, churches, and law enforcement to get the names of kids to participate in the program. But I don't know where they're located right now. Oh,
It says Centennial.
6626
Yeah.
South Lincoln Street in Centennial.
But
Yeah.
office or warehouse, because the problem was the warehouse.
Problem is that they need a large amount of space. They have a whole bicycle program, so they take donation of used bikes, and they have a group of people who repair and fix these bikes, and those are given away, so they need an awful lot of square footage, and obviously square footage is expensive, so.
Okay. Everybody okay with that at 800?
Yes.
Karina?
I'd like to bring it down slightly to 500, and I'd like to encourage them and connect them to Project Recycle. Is that one of them that does the bikes? Because what I'm hearing is they are providing some services that other nonprofits are doing. So if they can begin to partner, I think they can become a little bit more stable, perhaps, and utilize resources with others. So I would say, again, just as the previous reduction, it's a message of we're going to scale back a little bit and encourage other means to support.
I'm okay. This is, according to this, it's their 59th year. They do help out a lot of Littleton children.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. 800.
Okay.
Keep it or totally get rid of
Yeah.
Let's move 500 with Karina.
Here we have 2 at 800, 2 at 500. What would you do, 8 or 5?
it. I'd give it 8 if we're gonna do it.
Let's go.
8, okay. Carol? Oh, geez.
Tiebreaker, Debbie?
5.
Make the big box.
So we'll go with 5?
Yep.
Next.
I think their recent address is the North Pole, just saying.
Tiffany.
Finance director jokes again.
Doctor's Care, 15,000.
This, I tell you, for District 2, this is a huge deal because a lot of the folks there, lower income, really depend on doctor cares, as well as North Littleton Promise. Those are 2 big organizations for District 2. For that northeast quadrant of the city, it's
I think for our city,
Yeah.
they're providing a huge service.
and
for
they're
sure.
providing it directly to our citizens.
Everybody okay? Yep. Gateway Domestic Violence Services, 5,000.
Is this the one that was not based in Littleton? There was a few
No,
that
it is
were-
not based in Littleton. And that's always been a conversation. How many of the Littleton citizens do they actually serve? We do ask for numbers. I think they try to provide them. I think it's been interesting to see the funding that's coming from other sources. There's 1,000 out at Inglewood. You know, Aurora's giving almost $170,000. I mean, I've always kind of wondered why we have it up there, but,
Does it serve Littleton residents?
Well, it says 300.
300.
yeah. But we also are challenged with, I mean, I'm sure they serve some in Littleton, but then who's got the Littleton mailing address, how far that reaches, so whether they can actually dissect our citizens or not, I don't know.
Are there other organizations in Littleton that serve this population?
I would assume that All Health does some of that. Kelly?
Just to tell you what I know about them is that they're a shelter. And so the women and the children who go there are referred by our police department. If they're in a domestic violence situation and they don't have anywhere else that they can go, and so that's why they're not based in Littleton. They're based in Arapahoe County, but they serve women in domestic violence situations in Arapahoe County.
You're saying that serves families that our police department needs to place?
They have, what I can also tell you that I know is their location is kept secret. And so that the male who's accused doesn't know the location of where well, it's a shelter for women.
Oh, okay.
So I know it goes both ways, but this is a shelter for women and children. So that's why the location is kept secret. So the only way a woman would know about it would be that she got a referral from law enforcement.
I'm okay at the 5,000 level because it does help our police deal with a sick situation, like relatively quickly.
I agree with
So
that.
I'm in support of the 5K.
I would support it as well.
I'm good with it.
All right, 5,000. Historic Downtown Little Merchants Association, that's an in-kind. We can talk about those later if we want to. Humane Society of South Platte Valley, 4,500. We brought this one in a couple of years ago. We had been giving money to Freedom Dogs, Freedom Service Dogs, and they are not located in Littleton, and they were not serving Littleton specifically. But Humane Society is our animal service provider exclusively. The program that they have done in the past was a free spay and neuter. They offered that with, I think we gave them $4,500 in the past.
Yep.
And they were offering free spay and neuter for families who could not afford to have that done. And so, and they had to be Littleton residents.
And there's no dog pound anywhere near Sue's.
No.
So this is sort of like,
And it's who we contract with, so that's where they
Right.
where they go. This one they want to use to educate children on animal care.
I'm okay with 5.
All right. Anybody, or
45.
5 or 45?
The 45.
Everybody okay with 45?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, 45 there. Now, Integrated Family Community Services, that is what was Interfaith. And so they are at 20,000. And it's my understanding they've lost a substantial funding resource from another entity. So they're in a little bit of hurt right now. Anybody have any problem with the 20,000, or would there be a consideration to go with their request of 25?
I'm good with 25. I think they're known for doing a lot.
And they do a lot for 3,000 estimated Littleton folks. Yeah.
I will mention that this is the one organization that we did limit based on the new policy recommendations with a cap of 20,000. So they did request 25, and that's why staff recommended 20.
I think that's.
That's going to go with
fair.
the policy we stick with.
Well, these are, let me be clear, these are not policies, these are recommendations.
We adjust the recommended policy of 20, put the cap at 25.
We are not operating off of that. We will review that when we do
Right.
review it.
I'm okay at 25.
I'm fine with 25.
I'm going to try to move towards a policy, so I'm going to stick with the 20 that you recommended.
Good for you.
Same
For
thing.
good reason.
20.
2020, Peggy? So we're at 20.
I'm saying it's 20, right?
Littleton Crabapple Route, $1,500.
What did we get for that?
Nothing.
15 trees.
Trees, 15 trees that are planted on public property. I quite honestly, I would suggest we remove this one from the list. Remove this one from the list.
I think this is, I know I've said this in the past, I think crabapple root and so forth, it helps distinguish us, it helps beautify the city, it attracts people along the route and so forth. So I understand this. It's not breaking the bank, and it's not asking for more. It's trying to help in a way that I think is compared to the past to the cherry blossom stuff in Washington. It's something that distinguishes us. It's on maps, photographs.
I agree with Peggy. I think they've done a really nice job of getting out there to trying to keep it alive, and obviously they don't have a huge budget at 4,000, so this is some, makes up for a quarter of that at least, or a third of that, so I support it.
I agree with them, and I think the money that goes back into the community, they buy the trees at O'Toole's, everything going back, but I agree with them.
Yeah, and I'm okay with funding it too. I would like to know some of the in-kind too that we do for these guys, because some of this, it's on Littleton property and Keith.
This is a clarification. There's no guarantee that the trees will be on public property. A big chunk of the trees, for example, went on school last year. So the in-kind services is we provide irrigation and tree maintenance. The crabapple route group basically provides location, plants trees, and then from that moment forward, it's the city's responsibility to take care of them if they're not on private property. And then we also take the blame if, say, 1 out of 100 dies, and we end up picking up the cost of that if a tree goes south on us. So that's
we pick up the cost, what's replace the tree.
So
on
we
public
also
property or on private property?
no, only on public property.
Okay.
But you plant 100 trees. Crab apples aren't designed to live in the high prairie, so you got to water them a lot the first year, especially to get them established, and then we have to prune them, we have to maintain them, and that's basically they plant the trees, and it's us from there on out.
It does say tree planting to be on public property at location with sprinkler irrigation water available, agreed to by staff. So we are spending public money to plant trees on public property and asking staff to take care of them. Can be high maintenance trees, they're slow grow, I don't know. I just obviously am not in favor of this all.
Do we know how our own staff feels about the trees, such as the arborist?
Yes, the arborist is on my staff, and we have an inventory today, just like we have an inventory of all the trees on public property. These ones, we take care of them. Sometimes our process with the group is a bit challenging. But, you know, we take care of them, they're part of the tree stock. I'm glad that we're moving towards a fruitless crabapple. That's a huge, I don't know where they got that plant from, somewhere in Japan, I think, but it's a great investment. You're gonna plant crabapple trees.
Oh, but what I'm trying to ask is our arborist in favor of more crabapple trees or not in favor?
So
Not saying.
the crabapple route was originally established, and that's basically been planted out. So all the requests now for public property are in more challenging locations. In the past year, they proposed an expansion along the the community trail. The problem is it's in several locations, it's surrounded by riparian areas. There's no irrigation. You know, we'd have to pay Denver Water a tap fee. So we've tried to work with them on that. We spent some time this year out of our budget last year to kind of do a little bit of a master plan with South Suburban, sort of a planting plan along the community trail. So, I mean, the route itself is done. And maybe we want to add to the route, but the route itself is done.
I didn't hear an answer to the question I tried to ask.
Would you
prefer not to answer?
They are a maintenance challenge, but, you know, all the trees that are planted are considered part of the city's tree stock, so we do take care of them.
Do we need more?
I can't answer that question.
Let me, if I may, let me add a little to the,
Not like taking a
That was
fit or
evident.
anything, so what I'm really doing with it.
so, yeah, I think my conversations with Keith, Public Works, and specifically our arborist, Dave Flagg, you know, I think when you look at the city at a larger scale, yes, I think there is a very common approach where you want a diversity of trees throughout your community. You know, and we historically in our state, we have had a challenge with elms as an example, where you have a disease that comes in, and obviously the diversity minimizes some of the impact that you could see from disease. Now, I'm sure that's what Dave Flagg, our arborist, would say, diversity. At the same time, this is kind of a separate discussion, so this really is a policy decision for the council. If you want to support a corridor like that, then certainly that's fine. Just recognizing diversity of trees is still another goal of ours.
I think we have 4 that said yes already, though.
We have true. Okay.
I would support this as well. I think a little bit going back and reiterating what Peggy said. This is something that we identify with in the city. You see it make the calendar every year, a picture of our crabapple trees. And when we think about connecting our city visually as well, you know, considering other ways we can do that, this is a lower cost way to kind of create that connectivity across the city. So I would support this.
Okay, next one is Littleton Public Schools Foundation.
What's the money for?
Kelly?
This is for the stride, and this is an in-kind, I think, that you're going to discuss in a little while.
No, the one before that.
$3,500 cash.
I'm sorry. That one is for the Spirit Dinner that they have in April. It's their largest fundraising event of the year.
Is that the table?
It is.
Includes the table.
Okay.
And the foundation supports scholarships, and what are some of the things the foundation supports?
For a long time, the foundation was tied to the district's technology initiatives. So they were the first to fund the little EEE computers in the 3rd and 5th grades. Since then, the mission has expanded, but the foundation supports the school district's initiatives. The foundation doesn't financially support anything that the district hasn't previously identified. In the last couple of years, it's been about mental health. Since the tragedy at Arapahoe High School, the district has placed great emphasis on mental health. So,
I'm okay with 3,500.
35?
I'm okay to support both 35 and in-kind.
Okay. North Littleton Promise, $5,000.
Yes.
Peggy? Pat?
Yes.
Kyle? Carol? What is it? North Littleton Promise?
What's it do? Did you read the information? There's information in there for everyone.
It's, they support.
We already have enough votes, so never mind.
Okay. Rocky Mountain Stroke Center, $1,000.
Is this based in Littleton?
It is. It's in the northeast area. It's over by Wells Fargo Bank.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right by King City.
And this is like a rehabilitation?
I'd refer you to their application.
This is more, what they want the money for is more for messaging and kind of outreach,
Yeah, they
marketing,
wanna build
what
webinars.
stroke is, what are the warning signs.
It's good for our citizens. This one is.
Understanding stroke.
Staff recommendation.
Yes, so do I.
Okay. All right, looks like we're good on that one.
What amount?
1,000. TLC Meals on Wheels, $8,400.
Yes.
Peggy?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Karina? Kyle? Carol? Okay, good there.
Knock off too much.
Are we decreasing anything? Or you keep on
$800.
Okay, so now the new funding, Arapahoe Philharmonic. I think we said no last year, and they would like $2,000. Staff's recommending zero. Do we agree with staff's recommendation? Karina?
I think I have to agree with staff's recommendation now.
Carol? Jerry?
Agree.
Me too. Next is Break Bread. And this is a new one.
And they have really served the community well from what I heard. Like there was a big demand the first time they did it, right? This is the...
It says 2,500.
The participation was really high. Yeah.
So this appears to be primarily serving in this with the schools.
Yeah, I think it's like, Sally, you might
Community
know
dinner.
what that means. It's like dinners for students who
Meals,
aren't able
dinners
to have them.
at East Elementary, Field Elementary options. They host catered meals
Yeah.
to parent-student events sponsored by the school. In some cases, it's, let's see, $4,000. Okay.
So, it's a nice thing, but I don't think we need to take on new things. I'm trying to prune some of these things, given our demands. I think we finally we have an expectation going forward. And if there's some way we can perhaps help them do better outreach to get other funding elsewhere, maybe make them aware of grants to apply for.
Are they, so they're serving a different need than TLCM?
I think these are students, whereas TLC is more the older generation, or am I right? Help me here.
I'm looking up TLCs real quick.
TLC
TLC
is
is for people who are confined to their home.
Yeah.
They may be elderly, they may be disabled.
And there is a program with the Littleton Public Schools where children are provided meals to take home during the week. Is that with Littleton Public Schools, or is that some other organization?
My familiarity with that may be limited, but I think some of the school PTOs take on that sort of a responsibility. I know at East Elementary School, they have, not at East, at Centennial, and I think East does too, but they have a food bank that's run by the PTO, and the student community donates to that, and they send the kids home with backpacks for the weekend.
Yeah, this is not that. This is if there's an event at the school, like teacher night or something like that, these guys bring in food for the parents and the students. It's for events at those schools, Options Field and East. They provide meals to events sponsored by the school. So, Peggy, where are you at on it? You're a no, right?
I mean, yes.
Okay. Pat, say yes. Kyle, say yes. Jerry?
No.
Carol?
No.
Karina?
No.
I'm no. Okay, cycling without age. This is the cycling to bring the, folks who can no longer enjoy the parks and open space and trails and I can't remember what these things are called.
It's still not a nonprofit. I have no issue. They're still not a nonprofit.
Neither is Doctor's Care.
Yeah.
Doctor's
Yeah.
Care is not a nonprofit.
With Dr. Care, I
either,
can
so-
justify this one.
Okay, so you're a no. Carol?
I'm a no.
Karina?
No.
Peggy? No. Okay, we've got 4 no's. What about the in-kind?
Well, only if you approve the one above it.
Oh, that's true.
Well, if it's in kind, if they get funds for the bike elsewhere, the in kind will use the omnibus. I think.
Could do it that way.
Since it's in-kind, they can come back. It's not a financial, we don't have to put it on budget season. Okay. Family Tree, they've asked for $20,000. They are a new one.
Woodbridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
And so, staff has recommended 0. Peggy, where are you at? Okay. Pat,
Keep going, I gotta move on that.
Kyle?
It's a good cause, but I think,
Yeah, I
no,
agree.
0.
Yeah. Carol, yeah. Okay, we're a no. Graceful, the Graceful Foundation. And this is the Graceful Cafe. Yeah.
Foundation.
And they're asking for $5,000 to help fund their meal program. And staff is recommending $1,600.
What was that? Why 16?
Particular reason?
We did, so after we made recommendations for the ones we had done in the past, we tried to split the money out that was remaining to meet to the budget amount.
The butter spread.
Yes.
No. Kyle?
yeah.
Pat?
Yes, and I would actually probably say I'd increase that to 2,000.
Peggy?
They're doing a great job.
Okay. Peggy?
While she's thinking, I would like to increase it to 2,000.
Okay, Jerry?
I'm a no.
Karina?
I'm a yes at 2,000.
I'm a yes at 2,000. We're a yes at 2,000. Littleton, okay, that's in kind. Littleton Symphony Orchestra, they want 2,000. Staff is saying no. Anybody object to staff's recommendation?
Did they do that? No, that was raffle.
Okay. That's a 0. Project Angel Heart is a new one. This is meal preparation. Primarily, meals are free to anyone who's ill, regardless of age. They deliver them to alleviate hunger. I don't know that this, I guess what is the difference between this and Meals on Wheels?
And the which one?
Meals on Wheels. This is run out of Denver. They tailor the, let's see, your meals are available for, and tailored to address clients' medical diagnosis, symptoms, allergies, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm a no.
Okay, Carol?
No.
No.
I'm a no here. We're no's. Okay,
All right.
so we're through there. All right,
So,
save any money?
yes.
Oh, please, yes.
So the budget was 86,300 and you're currently at 81,900.
All right, is everybody good with this?
So that's the bottom line number
Okay.
we have?
Yes.
So 8190?
81,900.
All right,
Which is less than 2018.
so, yeah.
Yeah, save money.
So that is this year.
We didn't
Next-
save money, we spent less.
We spent a lot of money.
I mean, we
Sounds like my daughter talking, Peggy.
Yeah. We did not save money. So,
All right.
so that will show up
What we're going to do in kind?
Are we going to, do we need to do in-kind? Do we need to approve the in-kind?
No, not for the in-kind side.
Okay.
I think by approving the application, you're affirmatively approving the in-kind services for those ones who requested it. And we'll talk about the in-kind services a little bit later tonight.
Can you go back to the spreadsheet? Because I've got one here that says Littleton Leadership Academy, but it says $2,500, but I don't think we did.
The next one,
We just did
Well,
in-kind.
it says in kind.
the next one said that they withdrew the cash ask.
All right, then we're good.
Yep.
No cash, in-kind, okay. And then we will revisit this in January at our retreat. Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mayor, let's just pause for a second. I think the in-kind, at least for the Littleton Leadership Academy, it's new, so it's not going to be reflected in the next discussion that we have later this evening.
Oh,
So we are going to need direction, at least on that one.
Okay.
And if there's any other in-kinds that are new as part of this request, right? Am I correct?
Yeah.
That would be the only one that's new, you're right,
Okay,
yes.
so at least, I guess just that single one, it's not going to be reflected in the history of our past in-kind services.
Okay.
Discussion a little later.
So their in-kind ask is to not be charged for use of city facilities, not be charged for use of historic photos, videographer, if mutually beneficial for Channel 8. They've asked for ongoing articles in Little's report, citizen representation on their academy steering committee, active recruiting of boards and commission members for the academy, and 2 high-level staff members to participate in the academy per year. Karina?
I support this. They're building connections and leadership within the community for all of the nonprofits that we've talked about.
Of all ages.
Of all ages, yeah.
Carol?
I unfortunately have gotten 2 complaints about political perspective being not balanced. And so it makes me nervous to be supporting something when we have those complaints, until we look at those complaints and see if they're valid.
Jerry?
I'm okay with doing it this year, but I want to hear about it as the year goes by. If that happens, then we won't do it again.
Okay. Kyle?
I support it, and for the record, Karina and I were both participants last year, and I'm
Graduate.
graduates.
I did it years ago.
And I'm on the executive committee with the 3 ladies now, so yeah, I support it.
I support it.
Dave?
Yeah, given everyone is out of the game. I mean, it's not a political issue, it's trying to educate people about the city.
And if it does become one.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate Carol's comments on that too.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we're good.
Are we?
We are. We are, good. Fire administrative support update.
I am very bad at technology, evidently.
That's not a good comment from our finance director.
I have the worst.
It's PowerPoint, not Excel. That's the difference.
Yes, you're right.
I can do Excel, no problem.
Sorry.
Put an Excel spreadsheet in front of this girl.
I don't understand. Tyler will be down shortly, I'm sure. All right, we're just going to truck along here. So we just wanted to kind of give an update on the administrative support related to the fire department. With the fire department leaving the city, there's definitely some overhead costs related to providing fire services. Some of the departments, city manager, city attorney, HR, finance, building maintenance, IT, and fleet. And In the past, the partners have paid a portion of this administrative fee back to the city. And in 2017, the total amount, so the two partners and the city's equivalent share is about $900,000. I think what... Don't leave yet.
Page up or page down?
There we go.
Going?
Yeah, you can just arrow.
It's on this one, and it needs to be on that.
We'll send our finance director to a remedial.
I need
Yeah.
help here. Great. Sorry.
Going where you want?
Yes, perfect. Okay, we're there. All right, so just an update for council. In 2019, when we evaluated the budget, a couple of things, a few things were changed related to the administrative support fee. Two things, we reduced by 2 FTEs. We had a fleet FTE that we're going to reduce, and then also in the IT department. We reduced some costs related to rentals, postage, software, and then the largest of which was insurance, essentially property and liability insurance. So with all of these reductions in 2019, we were able to reduce that by about half. So we're about $450,000 in reductions for the 2019 budget related to the administrative support piece of that. Some of the next steps that staff would like is we're going to evaluate the actual impacts over 2019 and even into 2020. There's some things that we just can't determine at this point, things related to workers' comp, things related to health insurance, dental insurance, things like that, that we just need to really look at over the next year and into 2020 to really know what that impact is to the city and to employees overall. And then the other thing is, we want to apply priority-based budgeting. We started it this year, we're working on it in 2019, and we're going to continue in 2020. So we think that by having these two things over the next couple of years, we'll be able to look at our internal services that we're providing and kind of reallocate some of those resources. And then the other thing is, there's always opportunities through attrition to downsize your staff just naturally. And so those are just a couple of things that we're looking for over the next 2 years or so. But just wanted to give you an update that we were able to reduce some of those costs related to that admin fee, which was definitely a concern and question.
And what about some just operational, lights, water, just the fire stations that we did have that we were paying utilities on? There are obviously savings there. Are those some savings we'll just see over time?
I think they are, but I think one thing too is that the partners shared in that cost too already, and it was direct costed to the fire department, so it's not going to be a dollar for dollar savings. We might see a little bit of that elsewhere, but as far as the stations themselves, probably not. We might see in property and liability reduced premiums or something like that.
This is regardless whether it passes or not, correct?
Yes, because we'll be contracting in 2019.
Right, but I think we would still have more needs, I guess, if it didn't pass. I would think we would.
There would be a whole different discussion.
Right, I would think so.
So what was this number?
It was $900,000 in 2017, and in 2019, it's about $450,000 that we were able to reduce it by.
In the past, that was part of the administrative fee that we charged, and so we were compensated by our partners for that. So obviously with the parting, there's no compensation, but there's also less cost. And so this was part of what was, I think, important for us to really keep an eye on, that when you release, nearly 170 employees and 12 stations? No, how many? I can't even remember how many fire stations we have now. I've moved on. But, and all of that stuff, that there's definitely, we need to keep an eye on this thing, because there's got to look like there's some something there.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think the optics of that are very important for the public too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and staff is very well aware of that. We're going to continue to look at it. I think the hardest thing with the administrative fee, and I'll give finance as the example, we have a payroll technician who manages payroll for the entire city, and by reducing the need to process payroll for fire, that might eliminate 30 or 40% of her time, but you can't eliminate 30 or 40% of that FTE. You just can't, because there's just other legal requirements that you have to have someone who monitors and manages that. And so I think that's why being able to reallocate some of those resources, freeing up some time of hers, she might be able to work in other areas of the finance department. So I think those are opportunities that in finance and HR and the other departments that we're going to be looking towards.
In fact, if I may add to that, one of the discussions we had with council here during the 2 nights was, again, using finance as an example, was perhaps spending more time on business audits. So this is an example where Tiffany's kind of re-examining her own department to look for opportunities to kind of shift the resource there so that we can do, in that example, more audits.
So are those additional audits or replacing audits that we would be paying somebody else?
Additional.
Okay.
Become more efficient yet?
More efficient, more revenue. That's the example.
All right, moving along. Maybe. So one thing that has always been of interest, and we want to be more open and transparent with council, is just understanding what kind of in-kind services the city is providing to both internal parties and also external parties. And they're going to be passing around a very detailed list of some information related to these in-kind services. I do want to note that the information you're seeing here on these 3 events only includes 3 departments. At the time that we prepared this, we only had information from 3 departments, so it's fire, police, and public works. The information that you have before you is a little more inclusive. It also includes any finance work that might be done in kind, and also communications, who has a large part of a lot of the events throughout the city. So I just want to note that if you look at these 3, they are going to be a little different between the screen and what you're seeing in front of you. These are 3 events that everyone are pretty familiar with: the Main Street Block Party, the Stride, and of course Western Welcome Week. Just to kind of give you an idea, so before you for those 3 departments is about $48,000 of in-kind services. This could be providing police to manage the event. This is providing public works help to set up and take down barricades, or things like that. And then the Stride, the same thing, closing streets, that takes manpower as well. So just to kind of give you an idea of that. So I think just to kind of put it in perspective, we split it between internal and external events. And so as far as internal events, it's about $260,000 of in-kind services that we provide: 4th of July Candlelight Walk, recycling, elf crawl, large item drop-off, refrigerators, stoves, things like that, and then Little Jams Criterium. And then some of the external events that the city manages or provides in-kind services for is about $78,000 or $80,000. So in total, it's about $337,000 of in-kind services. I think what's important for us to understand is that staff citywide, we believe we can manage these events currently, but if there are certainly additional events that are added to this list or new ones that come forward, we will definitely have to evaluate our staff resources, because a lot of times these are in-kind services, and so we're pulling our staff away from something else that they could be doing or working on, so it's kind of an opportunity cost. So we just want to make sure that we keep that in perspective when we have additional events that are coming through the permit center, or asking for support from the city.
Carol and Karina, does this include overtime costs? Is this, I'll give you an example, for people to set up barricades. Is that work that they are doing under their normal workday, or is this additional pay?
Well, it kind of depends on the event. A lot of the events are held on Saturdays, which is not a natural working day for those
Right,
departments. And so, yes, it would include overtime for
And
those.
then I have a second question, and do we have something in the line of payback, what the city gets back for these expenditures? That seems critical. What do we get for this money?
So we did a cursory review, and we get about $70,000 in revenue related to these organizations.
To these three?
No,
Or to
I'm
the
sorry, to the
stage?
list, yes.
70,000 for 336,000. Ooh, that's a good return.
What do you mean by direct revenue?
Parking permit fees reimbursement.
You might explain some of that. We got sponsorships, Kelly might.
Yeah, I've got the numbers here. For example, the elf crawl is on your list, and the elf crawl brings in about $21,000 in revenue each year because we sell tickets for that.
So that means the 16, or the almost 17,000 is, we're in the black on that one.
That's
You said how
correct.
much did you want?
About $21,000.
Of all the events, the elf crawl is probably the one that is the one and only that is in the black.
That makes money.
Charge a fee.
It's direct, it's related direct to this event. I mean,
Specific to
there's other.
that event. That's
Wait a
correct.
minute, so clarify. So we're bringing in the revenue, but, so just as an example, candlelight walk costs money, but there are a hell of a lot of people drinking a hell of a lot of booze and eating food at restaurants.
So we had that conversation today. That we don't have a way to track.
I know, so I just wanted to make that, but we could potentially compare another weekend or just a random weekend or night or.
The only way to do that would be to reach out to the businesses themselves, because when they remit sales tax, it's on a monthly basis for restaurants, and there's really no good way to know if that weekend, how much was actually driven from that weekend. We don't have the metrics or the ability to do that.
At least I know, because when I've been in the candlelight walk, there are hordes of people eating lots of food and drinking up on the rooftop that wouldn't be there most nights that time of year.
Very
Right. So,
I'm with what Peggy's saying here, and I think to just look at direct revenue as the only return is underselling what some of this is. I really think some of this is an investment in our community. Many of these events build community, which is what Jocelyn and Kelly's organization help us to do. It brings tourism and people into our city, if not to spend money in our city during the event, but they become aware of us and maybe come back. So I think there's ways that we can look at what the return is, and we may, that's an exercise in and of itself, I recognize that, but I don't think we can just look at this as an expense. There's, to kind of flip the way we look at this and say, this is an investment we're making in our community. Let's understand what the true return is.
And I think PBB is going to help with that, because all of these would be events in PBB, and so we would have the ability to track the revenue associated with that program and the expenditures so that you can get a full picture. Now, we're never going to know the sales tax impact specifically. There's just not a way to do that, but you're right, there are outlying revenues that we can attribute to these events.
Or cost savings when you look at hazardous waste events. So if we're investing 24, whatever it is now, what would it have cost us if we had this waste in our...
Carol, it seems really important that we come up with a way of measuring what we value about these things. If we're going to do priority budgeting, it only makes sense to do it for this too. So whatever we think we get from each of these events, or maybe the whole bunch, what value do we put in that? I'm sure there's something in the priority-based budgeting that has a way to do that. That number for Western Welcome Week bothers me, because I think that is a private endeavor, isn't it? Isn't that owned by, it's not a city they use?
I believe it's a nonprofit organization. Is that right, Cindy?
It is.
Money is collected for the people who are in floats and things, and that money goes somewhere. And I would want the city to have access to a fair share of the money that is generated directly to Western Welcome Week in exchange for that, or at least look at that, so that it's... what I'm trying to get at is when an event is owned by another entity, whether it's nonprofit or not, that makes money by being in Littleton and using our in-kind services, it only makes sense that we get some sort of payment for that, unless we think that we get enough non-tangible, intangible, and that needs to be, I mean, $336,000 is a lot.
More than that.
Just to give away because it's nice to have things going on there. Okay?
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with Carol that we don't want to be taken advantage of by for-profit events. Well, these...
Non-profits.
Or non-profit, yeah, profitable events. Will these numbers change or the income change based on the new event permit process that we looked at a while back?
Currently, there is no change to the fee.
Okay.
It's just a change to the process.
Okay.
But one of the options is that we could look at the fee. The fee's relatively low. It's $75 for the special event license, and then $75 for amplified sound, I believe, if you're going to have that. So we certainly could look at the fee structure on how we want to, if we want to address that.
But to echo what Councilmember Elrod said, that this is, more than dollars and cents. This is building culture in the community and building brand identity for the community here. And so, I mean, imagine if we got rid of Western Welcome Week over $29,000, how much value that adds. That's part of this. Is, I mean, how many people down here? Maybe some are just for that, coming from all over. So
Yeah, you want
that's
to test
really
the value,
important.
try to eliminate it. Peggy, and then Mark.
I'm almost passing out looking at the cost of the criteria. 92,000, almost $93,000. That seems...
Well, let me tell you about that. I have a pretty detailed breakdown of the cost of the criterium. The criterium is sanctioned by USA Crits and USA Cycling. So we pay a fee to USA Crits of $3,500, but in addition, we have to guarantee the prize money. So the prize money for that race is $20,000. I can go through the whole list of expenses. The event does bring in about $24,000 in revenue. We do think that we will be able to increase that next year. We're looking at putting 2 people under contract, one to obtain sponsors, and they would get 30% of the revenue of the sponsors they bring in, and another to look at vendors. Last year was kind of the first time we had the vendor area, and they really think that they could increase the number of vendors that are at the event. But this is not a break-even event. And this was a policy decision of City Council a few years ago, recognizing it wouldn't
But there's also national coverage, which I don't know how you put a dollar amount on that either.
No, but so what you just said sounded like maybe it's costing us a net of at least $50,000. When you said it cost us to get this, but as you kept talking, I lost track of my subtraction.
I think it comes back to that discussion of how do you define value, because it's not just the clear dollars and cents.
I know, but
What do we get for it?
with certain things, like Western Welcome Week, some of the attraction there, we attract people, and they're going to come back to vote. The criterion maybe is attracting people, but we're never going to see them.
I definitely.
And they're not spending that much volunteers.
I would,
And I love
Okay.
the criteria. I just want us to.
I want us to, we have got to stay on track. We've got some big stuff coming up. I think, if I may.
Very good. I like that.
I think this is good information, and I thank you, staff. We've not seen this before. However, no good deed goes unpunished. I think it's only half the story. And the other half of the story is kind of where we're going with this. And I think that is an important other half of the story. And so I would suggest that we get through some of the stuff we've got going on. And then next year, if you guys can prepare a study session where we can vet some of this out more. I would also offer, the one thing I heard tonight that Kelly said was that the elf crawl actually has $21,000 in income. And then I heard Tiffany say that's the only one that we charge tickets for. I think we need to look at that. I think we need to look at, there is nothing wrong with asking people for $1 or $2. When you've got 30,000 people to show up for an event and it's costing us X and we ask everybody for $2, is still, in my opinion, considered a free concert. So I think we need to test that water a little bit and look at some of those options in terms of helping to defray some of this cost, because we are looking at some really big expenses that are mandatory. These are not mandatory, and they're still big numbers, so we need to balance that out.
I just wanted to get out what I said, because we really need a conversation otherwise.
Mark?
Just quickly, actually, Mayor, you kind of touched on the point I guess I was going to make. This is the first time, we as an organization have been able to kind of assemble this. Priority-based budgeting is kind of maybe the emphasis behind all this. We do recognize that we need to come up with better metrics, not just here with these events, but quite honestly, through priority-based budgeting, we're going to be looking at a series of metrics throughout the organization. So level of service, if you remember that conversation as well. So yeah, this is our first attempt to try to get the council a little more aware of this. Appreciate the fact the council wants to have a little more policy discussion about how far to take this. So yeah, we certainly would welcome the staff that for the conversation.
Right, in January, is that when we're going to talk about it?
When, you could.
Well, it'll depend, I guess, how, I don't know if it would be part of the retreat, but it would definitely need to be, I think, a study session at the very least.
At some point, yeah, because when we're talking, 93,000 and some rest of it is relatively small, but I just want to know what we're getting. I know we get this other thing down the line, but I'd like to know more about it.
Okay. All right. Next.
All right. Leading to fees discussion. So last year, during the budget sessions, we discussed doing a cost of service study related to the planning and engineering departments for development review services. So we included in your packet a list of recommended adjustments to the fee schedule that we currently have. Just a reminder, we increased the community development fees in 2018, and we actually implemented engineering review fees at that time. So we've only had engineering review fees in place for about 9 months now. And we went through the cost of services study, and based on some preliminary information we received from the cost of service study, we are recommending that we adjust pretty much all of the fees related to planning and engineering, which I think is just a fallout of doing a cost of service study. The net effect of the changes to the city are minimal. It's only a difference of about $5,000 annually based on what we've currently received through 2018. So bottom line, there's not a big change, but there are some changes to the fees themselves. We've eliminated some of the acreage categories that we have. We've combined those, and then in some other areas, we've eliminated them altogether and offered a flat fee. So the ask of council this evening is to move forward with the fee schedule that's recommended by staff and to bring an ordinance or resolution to you in the coming months to adopt those fees.
I have just a question about this. Okay, so under you've got current fees, you've got, most of these have 4 numbers, you've got full cost, most of those are 4, they match with the current fees. And then you've got a recommendation and it's 1 number. You recommending that regardless of the cost of it, or regardless of the current fee, every one of those goes to 1 price point?
Essentially, yes. So that's where I was talking about. Currently, our fee structure has 4 levels, less than 1 acre, 1 to 10, 10 to 20, and above 20. Based on the information, because the cost essentially is the same regardless of the size of that parcel or size of that project, we're recommending just having a flat fee to kind of coincide with the cost of that service.
So her question then, so where it says 1,800, each one will actually be 2,000?
Yes. Yes.
Increasing the fee on some of them and decreasing on some.
On others,
It's just
yes.
hitting the average, basically.
So
Yes.
We're going to charge at least what it's going to cost us.
On some of them, yes. Some will be a little more than the cost and some will be a little less, but that's why I was mentioning the net impact is essentially 0.
Well, that's disappointing.
So I like this,
Buzzkill.
I like the simplicity of this. I like that you can justify what the costs are. You've done a study. I will say there's probably room for rounding up as opposed to rounding down, because costs are just going to incrementally increase, cost of living, et cetera, et cetera. So my only recommendation would be take a look again and round up.
So to that point, one of the things that we like about this cost of service model and the consultant that we're using is that the city will actually own the model upon completion of this cost of service study. They worked extensively with staff to understand the model, all the pieces of it. So it'll give us the opportunity to review the fees, whether that be annually. I think one thing that's important is that we've got the vision to comp plan coming to surface. And once that's completed, that may change the direction that council may want for fees related to development. And so it'll give us an opportunity to assess that whenever we feel that we can do that.
I think we can do that now. When I looked at the ranking, we're still somewhere in the middle, so it's not like we're the most expensive out there. So I think we can, I'll just use one as an example. The SDP site plan is 2,000, like maybe that could be 2,500. Again, it's not that it's going to make us rich, or it's just more of, we know that some of these costs are going to increase naturally, as opposed to going back 6 months from now to change them. I should say, if we're putting in this change now, let's just raise it slightly.
Peggy?
I don't think we should be charging for fees anything less than actual cost. We should not be subsidizing anything. So if we round up a little bit and slightly overcharge.
I love rounding up.
$20.85 or whatever. But it just makes no sense to me that we should be subsidizing anything for our fees.
Jerry?
Now, I thought are these mostly impact fees?
No.
Okay, never mind my question.
Carol? I agree with Peggy that I don't see any reason why we would want to charge less than it costs. And it would seem like a good opportunity to charge more than it costs.
I don't want to charge less than what we're charging, even if it is more. I mean, if it is less for the cost. If we're charging 4,000 and it's only costing us 3,000, I say stay at 4,000.
I agree.
I think one thing too is that, we need to realize there's a legal issue related to charging fees. You certainly don't want to charge fees higher than what your cost of service or.
They have to be defensible.
Well, that's what I was talking about, the impact fees. The impact fees is the same way.
Yes.
So these fees are the same, treated as the same as impact fees, right?
Well, now that we have a model, yes, we can point to and justify here. So, yeah, similar in that perspective.
And I think the reason it's a wash is there's a handful of them that we're charging, $8,000, but the real cost is only $2,000. So we'd be pretty indefensible to keep charging $8,000 when they can say, hey, look, it only costs you guys $2,000.
We have white out, we can put it.
That could be fixed.
White out.
Okay, so I
Reason white
think
note is screen.
the message is to,
Round up.
yeah, and then bring them back
Yeah.
to that room.
Yeah, they'll be part of the budget adoption process here later this fall.
And will you just make notes on the copy that we get, what you changed?
Oh.
Thank you.
And I think you have what, it looks like there's 1 or 2 spots here where you have 2 associated for the smaller, under 10 acres and over 10 acres. I think there's a few other places in there that it might make sense to also divide it again to have a.
I mean, I'll answer some of that. We've had some staff discussions, and part of this is related to how the business comes into us. That's why some of those divisions are there. There's a certain level at which complexity changes, and so that'll often change how it's handled within the organization. So that's where we actually consolidated a lot of, see some of that diversity in the marketplace and adding complexity.
And I think over time, probably we were trying to estimate when we just think the existing fee structure was put into place. And so just using the zoning code, it probably is in the 70s, and thinking back that time frame, Littleton was different as far as what was coming in, and we were annexing land and we were creating subdivisions. So over today, you know what I mean? It's just it's changed in how we review things and what we're reviewing. So that's some of the reflected.
If you think about it, there's going to be very few parcels that come into us that are over 10 acres or something. It's just not, they're not there.
It's just changed that's
right.
Since the 70s.
And I would like to know too, on the comparisons on ones where they're 160% more or whatever than what we're charging, I'd like to know why are they able to charge more and justify it and we're not.
You're talking like another city?
Yeah,
I guess I would answer that because, as an example of this is, they may have a different review center. They may have a consolidated review center, or there's a variety of reasons why their fees would be different. Their code may justify different things that we don't have to do.
And that's fine, as long as you guys can just kind of give us an idea.
Right. And the other part of this that we talked about from a staff perspective today is the fees we're looking at them as a solo discussion, but they're also part of the bigger discussion of the vision and the comp plan as we piece together. Because this is a reflection of that as you go into your community, and then there's an economic development component of that. If you council chooses to try to incentivize certain development types or those kind of things, you can make adjustments or call-outs in the fee structure to do that. And other communities will often do that. And so it's a tool from that perspective as well that fits into the overall strategy as we go forward.
We're pretty even on planning and engineering, at least, correct? We're not losing money in that department?
Not now.
Yeah, we didn't have any fees till the start of the year. Remember that? Yeah.
Good answer.
January 1, we started.
Guess that's something else, right?
We were. Okay, next.
Ixnay.
All right, moving along. So the next item of discussion is parking lot items. So these were things that were tabled from the September 11th and September 12th budget meetings. The first one is related to open space policy, question number 22. And this was, does council wish to address several projects to improve parks and rec facilities in cooperation with South Suburban and the Parks and Recs District? And the city's contribution to, I believe there were 6 projects, is $596,000. That's the city's match. Keep in mind that a number of these projects would be grant funded partially from Arapahoe County and with another match coming from South Suburban as well. And the projects were listed specifically, so if you have questions on those specifically, I think we'll go ahead and go on. I'm touching the wrong button. So So I think the question was, does the city want to fund the 6 projects that were listed in policy question?
I think it's 3 projects.
Is it 3? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's 3 projects, and each
3,
is
6.
design and construction. So it's 3 projects with 2 parts each.
Okay.
So 3 times 2 is 6, she was right.
Karina?
I had a question for you, Tiffany, around the Arapahoe County match. So that is us choosing to use those Arapahoe County funds and tie it to this project, or is it if we invest, they invest? Is it a match, or we're...
There's actually an application process, and so we would apply specifically for these projects. That means that if we were to get grant funded, say the $500,000 from Arapahoe County, it could only be used on that particular project. If any of that were to change, we would have to go back to Arapahoe County and adjust the scope or forgo the grant or something like that.
So on page 178, our budget book, the line that says Arapahoe County grant would change if the open space projects line changes.
If Arapahoe County were to not grant us,
If we're not doing a project, I guess.
if we're not doing the project, then it would go to 0, but then we wouldn't have the grant match either.
The grant only exists if it is applied for and gotten. So South Suburban is not a beneficiary of the shareback money. So they often ask us to sponsor these grant requests because along with the shareback money that Arapahoe County gives to each municipalities, they also have a pot of money that they use to encourage the grant program, so you can get above and beyond. Now, grant money is sitting there, and they have an entire board, open space, Arapahoe County, open space, I can't remember the exact name of the board. They have someone who sits on South Platte Working Group on that board, and they review the grant request, and they grant or they don't grant. So typically South Suburban asks us to sponsor these for them so that, because one of the recipients of shareback are the only people that can sponsor the grant ask.
So I think, a little bit to your point, I think what you're asking is the $250,000 match from the city, that if we did not get the grant from Arapahoe County and we did not do that project, the city could use that $250,000 for another project, but it would have to be an open space project. Now, what you would do is we're using that $250,000 as leverage so that we can do greater projects and larger projects and have partners in that and have them help support. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to fund the whole project itself. So that's kind of an opportunity cost there.
So where I'm seeing this, and this was one that I had asked to come back to, because there is, coming this year, we have, studies on the east-west connections from the South Platte Working Group. There's a lot of work coming out of the Highline Conservancy. We've got the Enzer property and the South Platte River that's there. The community trail and creating connections to that. So I feel like there are other opportunities that we want to be able to save for and take advantage of. And right now, this just seems like a really big investment in parks and playgrounds, where I'd like to postpone that potentially to see what we can take advantage of now that helps support more of our connecting our Littleton and the open space in Littleton.
Well, if I can just give just a quick on the context of some of the decision making for this evening is you have in your packet a letter from Singleton Strategies. Singleton Strategies, that is Will Singleton, he's a facilitator for the South Platte Working Group. When we did the open space task force, Will was hired as a facilitator to facilitate that operation. So I have reached out to Will, and this was based on conversations we had at the study sessions regarding a priority list of our open space, trails, parks. we've got reports all over the place. We've got funding partners that have priorities, and this council has not been able to get their arms around it like I believe they should. It's a substantial amount of money. It is a $1 million stream every year, and I think we have an obligation to get our hands around it. This proposal is from Will to facilitate this group. It's very detailed in here what the group would be. It's a specific number of people. It's meant to be kept small so that it gets done within the period of time. So it would be done by the end of the year, which is not enough time for some of what South Suburban wants to do, but it is, in terms of doing a report, it's fast. And it takes everything that we've got, it puts it into the center of the room, and it gets disseminated, it gets figured out. All of this is done in conjunction with council's approvals and council's agreement to the scope of work, and council's touch point is back to council. This is what's going on, this is what's happening. At the end of that, we should be able to have a very clear idea of what we want to do and how much we want to spend, and not just over next year, but this year, but future. And I just want to make one other quick comment on the importance of this and why it has actually escalated recently. Cannot, unfortunately, give great detail because it is concerning land acquisition. We have an opportunity to consider a substantial, and not in terms of cost or size, but value, a substantially high value piece of property at this point for our open space, and we do not know what that will cost. We are in the beginning stages of needing to have a conversation about that. Without exec sessions, we will have conversations through our attorney, probably through email, because this is not, in order to protect the public's money, we need to keep these negotiations safe. But that is why this is important for us to do, because this has just popped up. There are other ones that are out there that we know about, and so without having a roadmap of priorities for us, it's been helter-skelter. Carol and then Pat.
Are you saying that we have a choice between keeping money available to possibly buy property when it becomes available versus spending it on park improvements?
Yes, your open space fund can be used for any of that.
Yeah, so let's see if this comment makes sense for where we are. I would much rather spend money on acquiring property, because that's available only once in a while, versus doing improvements which can be done anytime. Pat?
I remember supporting this, and it's because we have partners that are depending on this money, and I believe in the projects, so I'm going to stick with my guns there. And I understand where you're going with this, Debbie, and I appreciate that, but again, I still think we're on a tight timeline, right? Our partners are waiting for an answer from us.
It's their timeline.
It's their timeline, correct?
It's not ours.
I understand, but theirs is very important too.
Kyle?
Are these two things mutually exclusive?
No. Part of the ask is, what do you want to do in terms of moving forward any of the 2019 ask? South Suburban, do they have that letter from? I think there's
a spreadsheet in the packet there that shows the 3 projects.
Yeah, we've got that. The South Suburban has determined they
I
could.
see, yeah. Maybe Keith or Tiffany can comment on the delay
So-
what that time is. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so what we can decide to do is do all 3. Or we can decide to delay a couple and do one, or we can decide to delay all 3. So that's deciding that. Then the other decision is pulling the trigger on this group. The cost for the facilitation is about $30,000. We have the money in 2018. Mark has the money, so it's not a budget bump. And this, if we wanted to pull the trigger on this tonight, then it would start that ball rolling right away. And then the process would be to start managing back to council, scope of work, stuff like that.
And if we say, no, let's not do it, the opportunity for this funding is gone, is it not?
No, we'll have the open space funding, will just basically be kind of as people come in and ask for it, or as we have an idea or something like that. There just won't be a strong plan, priority plan from this council for the spending. It'll be one-off.
And what about for these improvements, though? Is that the same thing there? The money doesn't go away if we don't agree to do this?
No, okay, so Tiffany can help me out here. We probably need to talk about a little clarification of how the money gets spent. There's a chunk of our open space money that comes in that goes directly for management and supporting the river park. That's our partnership that exists. There's that chunk of money. And that's limited because it's maintenance and so forth. So then the other funds come in, and that's our generalized pot. And we have how much in the existing open space fund today?
At the end of 2018, we'll have $2 million roughly.
Okay, so that's what's in the fund today. And we get in that influx each year. The ones related specifically to the parks, the 250 would come out of that general cut to us. The other that they're asking for is a pass-through grant that if we don't apply, the money doesn't come.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. If we don't agree, there is no money.
That's right. And there's one, and for clarification, the county has changed their process. Up until this year, this year, there were 2 grant cycles a year, spring and fall, and now there's 1 in the spring. That's it, per year. And so, I mean, that's how that's how we kind of parse and put the money out there today. So at the top of that list, we've made a historic commitment to the river park. That's one. Again, but it's limited how much we can push there because the ballot issue limited that.
Yeah, 20%.
20% of your open space funds can go to maintenance and operations. Cannot. It has to go to capital. That's the way the ballot item is.
And is that why this recommendation takes into account all of that, the second one?
I mean, first, I'm supportive of the Singleton proposal. I think that's important to move forward in kind of a comprehensive, cohesive manner. I also think, we talked about, just improvements can be done anytime, which they can be, but just seeing firsthand from what, Stern Park, the improvements for the amount of visitation there, the last couple of years to after the new improvements, it is just skyrocketed with how much the community has taken advantage of that. And, I'm supportive of the Harlow Park and the Writers Vista fully. The Hamlet Park, just to me, I don't think I've ever been to that park, and it seems to me more like a little private enclave over there. Yeah, it is a public park there, but there's, limited access over there, so I'm not fully sold on it.
I mean, you'll see something like that in priority-based budgeting as well, because we have a whole bunch of things as a community that we got as part of developments that are on the public role, as opposed to a private role like an HOA or a metro district. And Hamlet Park is one like that.
Great enough.
I'll support the recommendation here that we go forward with Harlow Park. I do think Harlow Park is serving a broad community. A lot of people go to that park, there's lots to interact with in that park. And then given some of those other limitations you shared with us. But I do think it is very important that we are prepared to keep some money aside so we can make those big investments. As Carol said, we have to be ready to take those opportunities when they're here. And if we don't have it, it's missed.
Carol, what do you want to do?
I want to go ahead with the Singleton thing and allocate as much money as possible toward land acquisition at the cost of not doing improvements.
Jerry?
Let's go forward with it, with Singleton and Harlow. I'm all for. Hamlet's a little questionable.
Pat, you're on all
Well,
three?
I thought that was a really good compromise that Kyle stated, so I would agree with Kyle.
Now, Now Kyle's suggesting Harlow and Ryder's Fist.
Right.
Peggy,
I'm going to acquire land while it's available.
so you're none? You're none?
Say no to the kids, Peggy.
And if we can improve stuff too, then that's good, but I think we have to get land while it's available.
So we have 4 who are supporting Harlow. Their recommendation is Harlow only 2019, and then the others could wait till 2020. So if we have 4 with that,
Can I make a clarification, Mayor?
yes.
Actually, staff's not really recommending much of anything here, other than we were bringing forward to you the recommendation coming from South Suburban.
South Suburban's recommendation,
Okay,
sorry.
Make sure, yes.
Yeah, that
and-
is not staff's, that's South Suburban's
No, and
recommendation.
they're recommending South Suburban, all 3 of these parks for 2019.
Yep.
What we're showing you there is that if you waited until after the Singleton report was done, that the only project that would move forward in 2019 is Harlow, the other 2 would be deferred. That's the clarification. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
I also want to clarify, defer doesn't mean that we're making a decision to fund it in 2020. We'll revisit in 2020 after we get Singleton and bigger picture. So really, if we go forward with this, the only commitment is the Harlow Park?
Well, that's a different question. I do want to clarify part of that discussion. If we choose to defer that decision until after the first of the year, those projects will not be built in 2019. The earliest they would be built would be 2020. Just in terms of, that's just like a construction fact, design and construction fact.
My suggestion was to move forward with Ryder's Park and Harlow Park ahead of the Singleton, but move forward with that as well, not defer those actions until after the.
Exactly.
You want to move forward with Harlow and Ryder's Vista.
That's what I was saying.
And I want to get this report, do Harlow, and the others can just see what happens.
So we have $2 million in the budget. We're looking to put in, use 529,000, was that the amount?
The city's portion is $596,000.
All right, so 600,000.
But it sounded like there were not.
I'm just trying to
$1 million.
make sure. So our fund would basically go down to, 1.3 million.
No, it wouldn't, because we also have revenues that are coming in 2019 that will help offset that. So if we include the $596,000 at the end of 2019, we would still have $2.4 million.
At the end of
At the end of
2019, that is not
2019.
money we can spend in 2019. That's money that comes in 2019
But we
that
still
doesn't
have
get spent.
3 million.
So land acquisition cannot,
How much do we
Don't
need
pay for
for
cash.
acquisition?
we don't know yet, we have not done, not gotten to the.
Do you think we need the whole shebang?
I don't know. I don't know, and we can also, we have partners that can help us with that too. And so this money, the open space money really is, a lot of the power of that money is the opportunity to use, to partner with people on that, and we're able to leverage and make that money go a lot farther, which, as you can see, is what they're trying to do here too. So South Suburban pitches in, and then, but I think, also that there are 2 $500,000 grants from Arapahoe County Open Space that are going to this. That is not our money, but that is money that is available to us, and we are saying it can go there. And as Keith said, there's 1 grant cycle.
Right.
So.
And did we, this was already awarded to us, so if we were to.
No.
Oh,
No, we can't, we can't go forward with the application without that money being in the budget.
If we don't agree to this, it doesn't happen.
They wanted this to apply was April, right? It was when you would.
Right, the cycle is April now.
and so it's not a guarantee that we'll get the grant money. And we would only go forward with these projects if the grant money came forward.
Right. We generally, I can tell you from a staff perspective, all of us have discussions about this. I was on the phone yesterday with Arapahoe County Open Space staff about other things and projects like this. So before things go into the cycle, there's a lot of vetting that goes on before they get there.
And the other interesting distinction here, the Harlow Park, we're contributing $250, the grant's $500. Ryder Vista, we're only contributing $92,000, the grant is $500. So the return on our portion of the investment for Ryder Vista obviously is much greater than it is for Harlow. So why is there that much of a kind of discrepancy of, the dollar in and then the incremental that you get?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't have the information to answer that question right at this moment, but part of it may be how the park is laid out, how, the equipment or those kind of things, and how it has to be divided, but I can check and answer on that.
Either way, I land with my first decision that I would support Harlow Park and not the others.
Same.
Peggy's none, Carol's none. I'm none. That's 3. The others are split. Harlow Riders Vista has 2 supporters, and Harlow alone has 2 supporters.
Well, if you count Harlow and Riders Vista, that's 4 for Harlow.
Well, that's what I asked, but you said no, you wanted it.
I was just saying that was my
outside, you
initial,
wanted
so
it.
if it's,
It's either 4 for Harlow only, or it's 3 for, no. So you go Harlow only?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. 4 for Harlow only.
What does that do to you, Keith?
We'll just, we'll go back and sit down with South Suburban and say the only project that was approved is Harlow. And, from policy, we'll have to talk about this with Mark, but the policy I'm hearing is that we're not going to spend any additional money, but if we are going to go for grants, that decision probably has to be made soon. Because it's not an application you can do in a week.
Would the grant then just be for the one park, or would
We would only be, at this point in time, we would only be applying for the one grant for Harlow.
And we can apply for a grant, another grant for other projects that we have.
in a couple of years?
No.
No, you can, we have up to 3 applications in the cycle, I think.
Whatever we
Yeah.
approve funds for.
Right.
So that we don't lose it. So we don't lose it this year. Is everybody okay with the singleton?
Yes.
Yep.
Focused? Okay. So we're good on that. We're good on this. Next.
All right, one of the other things that was tabled for this evening's discussion is neighborhood traffic calming. Staff brought back an option for council to add a full new program for traffic calming. We currently have $25,000 in the capital project fund for years 2019 through 2022 with no funding in 2023. What this new program would do is, one, it would add an FTE to be paid out of the general fund to help manage traffic calming throughout the city. We're going to ramp up the program, we're going to have someone to manage that. And then what we would recommend is actually a transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund in years 2019 through 2022 of an additional $75,000. So that will make a $100,000 investment in those years. And then in 2023, $100,000 from the general fund to fund that capital project piece of that. One thing that I do need to clarify is in the original PowerPoint that you received, the ending fund balance in 2023 I had stated as 15%, but it would be 14%. I had an error in my calculation when I did that originally, so I apologize profusely for that. So currently it's 16% if you want to add this traffic calming program, and also the $75,000 that we have another slide on, I believe, related to the document conversion. If you want to add those 2 programs in 2019, it'll reduce your ending fund balance to 14% at the end of 2023.
So you included the $75,000?
I did for the one-time document conversion, yes.
On top of this.
Yes. Which is
So how does it have an impact on 2023?
The document conversion is a one-time thing. It's just in 2019.
Okay, so how does it have an impact on 2023 fund balance, though?
Well, because you're using it in 2019, so it impacts the future ending fund balance. But that's a one-time thing. The traffic calming is a program that's being established.
Karina?
So when I asked about this, it was 75,000 was identified as an unfunded, essentially. But what I'm hearing is in order to add 75,000, you have to hire a headcount to now manage a program because it just increases in scope, complexity, and effort. So it's not necessarily just an ask for 75,000, now becomes an ask for 175,000.
Yeah, like I shared when we talked about it, we do not have the staff to do this in the neighborhoods. We just don't have the staff.
How many requests do we get a year? Would you guess? How many requests do we get a year? Applications?
I could probably look in my inbox right now, and I have an inbox file that's literally called Summer 2018 Traffic. And there's a lot of email in there. Let's just put it that way. So
I'll incur in it.
I was just gonna, as much as I would like to do this, how much would it make sense to, or would it make more sense to wait till after a transportation master plan to see how that fits in the whole program? Or is there any benefit to do that at all?
Okay, so I'm going to say that the detail that's in there would be one of the derivative plans out of the plan, like bike and pedestrian. This issue will be here today. It will be here the day after the transportation master plan. It will be here in a year. I mean, it's just, you all know it. You take the calls and emails too. I mean, you're aware of it. And they're very direct neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods feel that their issue is most important. So we can delay it and we can do it. I mean, it is a challenge, but we do not have the staffing, and this is also one of those things that, in my experience, Mark can speak to this probably too, is going out and working with the neighborhood on traffic calming. The residents don't do well when you send a consultant.
They don't do what?
They don't do well.
Oh, I know that.
They don't respond. You want to see a face from the city staff. I mean, that's just a reality of my experience in dealing with traffic calming.
Carol, I have gotten many of those emails that you now have. It seems that your department's response overall was that when you actually measure what's going on with traffic, that is speed and volume, that it often isn't what the complaint thought it was. That it's often not so fast and not so heavy traffic as they thought. Did I have that right? Yeah. So, if we apply traffic calming to a problem that isn't the problem it's perceived to be, then it seems that we get pretty much nowhere. Because if the complaint is cars are going 50 miles an hour where it's 35, and I have some of those, and your finding is, no, that's not actually true. And then we put traffic calming, and it's still going to be perceived as cars are going 50 miles an hour when they should be going 35.
What we talked about in the study session a few weeks ago is setting up those minimum thresholds. So, stage 1 is taking a look at it, doing signage. Stage 2. Stage 3 is the capital investment. So, you're not generally going to jump from...
What's this for?
This would be, you would get, say, a neighborhood that is actually stage 3. That you've got the point, you've got the issues, you have those things. Then you would be discussing a capital solution to the problem. Leading up to that, you would have gone through the education and enforcement. I mean, that's number 1. Number 2 is the engineering and the signage, those things. I mean, those expenses are not that big. And then the third one is the actual physical install. And those are, a variety. We talked about some of those options.
Well, another thing is my perception of things that are traffic calming are things that some people are going to hate. Like traffic circles. So we get so many complaints about where there are traffic circles. Speed bumps, yes. And so you were talking
right.
about...
Correct, that is the preferred alternative if we're installing something like that.
So it might be another example of we are creating different problems where we might solve one problem, but we create another complaint. So instead of complaining about speed, they're complaining about those darn traffic circles.
Yeah.
Or the noise.
But that's part of the process of what we've talked about with the traffic calming program is that if you're getting to stage 3, one of the criteria was in there is that 75% of the neighborhood must sign a petition that says this is okay. So by the time we got that, there's a huge amount of community engagement. But I can also tell you that, for example, Councilor Elrod asked us earlier this year for a specific issue related to Lake Avenue, okay, related to speeds. We still have to invest time to do the investigation, to put a speed trailer out there, to do the data analysis. So those things don't go away, and they will continue to come up. And so that's a functional reality of it too. It's not like all of a sudden we set a threshold and the complaints are going to go down. That won't happen.
So we'll take a poll on where we want to go with this. I would suggest, council, that one of the things that we are going to be doing at our retreat in January is a very serious look at those needs, at those unfunded projects that we have, which are primarily infrastructure and streets and roads, and this could be included in that, adding an FTE, those types of things, and how we can look at other options and ways of funding that. So this could move into that, where it doesn't go off our radar, but it stays there. If it doesn't, we don't want to move this through on the 2019 budget tonight. So are there any other comments? We'll do a straw.
Yes, this council could decide something, but we can't commit.
We can't what?
Yes. So even though you're looking at 2019 to 22, things when even 23 could be quite different support from future councils.
True.
Right? So we ought to be focusing on what we can fund in our funding cycle that will get accomplished and doesn't have to require more funding going forward. Right? Get it done.
Conversation killer, Pigs.
Well, we're...
I mean, on that point, I think that's where we let the document conversion, that is one thing, that is just a one-time fee. So.
I'd rather spend money there. But this is, unfortunate, I guess I just haven't had really any complaints about it.
So the question is committing the 110 or 100? How much?
How much would the commitment be for 2019 budget?
That would be one FTE, and then the $100,000 in potential capital expenditures. And those capital expenditures would only come out of the process that you've gone through to get there.
So 210.
210.
And we would take that out of the general fund. And by the time we get to 2023, we will have reduced general fund percentage by 2, exclusively with this. Okay.
And to answer Peggy's question, I mean, one of the slides I showed when I was here in the study session on this topic was, at one point in the past, the city invested $100,000 a year, and then it went to 50, and then it went to 0. So the decision making along the way has been there. My only concern is the resource side of this.
Well, I think it goes back to our priority-based budgeting too, because then this now we look at this in terms of more of a priority and not nice to have, or not, oh gosh, we should have taken care of that. I mean, it actually becomes part of that thoughtfulness.
The challenge here, I think this is, identifying it as a program is how we should look at it, and that's what priority-based budgeting does. But we don't have, so we could say, yes, this is a priority, but we're not taking something else off the table. And that's my concern, is we're not ready. I mean, we know we have to do this, but it almost sounds like we're not smart enough yet of what we're not going to do. So I'm okay staying with your original recommendation of $25,000.
Okay. The next one is the 75.
Yes, and this is just a one-time expense of $75,000. Fund it from the general fund. It's not going to impact the percentage. It it's very immaterial to the percentage as a total, so.
One time.
Yeah, that's,
Me, Pat,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Jerry. Jared. Jared.
He's Jerry.
No, I don't like that they're changing the budget. We just, we need to figure out priority base what we really need to fund. And this is a part of it, like you said, we do need to fund it, but at some point, but I'm just not ready to jump on the boat yet.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to add this to what is in the existing budget. Rena?
Same.
I do. We're for.
So I have a question though, now that everybody has said that. What does this save in staff time to do this? I mean, once it's done? I'm assuming there's a
It's not
reason.
getting done. There is no staff to do it. It's not
Yeah, I
getting
mean,
done.
so what's it saving in the future, so once it is done?
The answer to that question is it's not being done now. And we don't have, it's not like we can drop an administrative assistant, it's part of your time to scan. The volume of files we have in Public Works when we just did the cataloging exercise was just about 4,000. And so, trying to do that at a clip of, one a day at best, it's going to take us a while. So
There will be discernible difference after everything is
yeah,
digitized.
the other part of this is one of the things that's important to us as we talk through this for, say, a plus in community development. Yes, it's easier for us to deal with, for example, applications, permits, all those things, but part of the vision that Jocelyn and I have is we want to have a point in the future where you're a citizen, you can click on a parcel, and you can see every derivative document that's come along related to that parcel. There's a lot of cities have moved to that, and it just creates a lot more accessibility and transparency. So those are some of the non-direct derivatives that are out there too. So.
And I would add to that too, the other thing on the engineering files, some of the historic files, they actually are the most complete files we have in Littleton because community development doesn't have as much detail of our historic paper files. So it is valuable for doing lots of research on just even existing conditions as we manage additional projects.
An example is we have a concern right today related to a wall at the cemetery. That took us 3 hours of staff time to do the documentation because it goes all the way back to a non-platted parcel. And that's just part of, from your Public Works Director, in the last year I had 200 years of experience with the city retired. And fortunately,
Retired.
200 years of experience
with
with the
staff
city
retired.
retired. And 2 of them are 44 and 42 years. And we have none of those historic
Over
files.
the last 10 years, we have like 5,400. That's called normal.
Well, I understand that, but I can also tell you that, for example, in the issue with the cemetery wall, we're fortunate that staff member is still coming in part-time occasionally for us. The staff today couldn't do that research. That's a 10-hour project with our current staff.
But that project would get cut down to what if it was all,
You would have searchable data,
so you cut down to maybe
tie it into your GIS
Hour.
application and those kind of things.
Max.
So, it's one of those projects where we can see a lot of benefit from it. Our ability to do it with our current staff is just not there. It can get delayed. There's no question about that. But at some point, we're going to have to move from searching through paper boxes to figure out what stuff is.
I would hate to lose any of that documentation to flood or fire. And have we looked into a company to do this for us?
That's what we would use.
Is that what it would be? Be a company?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, okay, so we're 4 on that, we're good. So,
Thanks, Jerry.
the next one is Principles of Sound Financial Management. How long will that be?
That would be about 5 minutes if.
Because I'm wondering if we need a break.
We probably have about 15 minutes left.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I think in total. One thing that I do want to clarify is, back when we talked about open space on Wednesday, a couple of weeks ago, policy question number 23 asked council for support of capital improvements at South Platte Park for a total of $33,940. And I just want to clarify that council was supportive of that. That is related to South Platte Park, our contract that we have with South Suburban that manages that. They have a couple of capital projects for public restrooms and fire monitoring systems. So I just want to clarify that council was supportive of that policy question. Okay.
You're asking what we decided 2 weeks ago?
Don't you remember?
I have to go back and look.
I lived through it. I don't want to go back and watch it again.
Hey, my daughter just got married this weekend. I left a lot of rain in California.
All right, so a couple of things that we wanted to just update council with and kind of bring to your attention. The impact fee study. So we did reach out to BBC, who did the previous impact fee study, and got an estimate of what it would cost to update all the fees other than the transportation fee and the fire-related impact fee. And so the estimate came in less than $10,000. And if council wants to move forward with that, we could do that out of 2018. And we anticipate we would have that portion completed in the first quarter of 2019. So again, this is just following the conversation a couple of weeks ago of updating the current methodology of the impact fees of all the fees other than fire and transportation.
We'll get it certified, we're not updating the methodology.
No,
We're
the
using
current-
the current methodology.
It'd be paid out in 2018, they're not asking for a budget adjustment.
Right.
You don't even need to ask us for $10,000, Mark can sign off on that.
Correct.
Okay, I think,
Just an update.
go, get her done.
Okay. And then the other issue that came up just yesterday, and Mark sent out an email regarding this, is the funding for the Immigrant Resource Center. We apply every couple of years for funding. It's $250,000 for 2 years, and unfortunately, we did not receive that grant for the next federal fiscal year funding. So the recommendation to council is that we continue to fund that through the end of 2018, so the balance of 2018 of $30,000 we mentioned earlier. And then also in 2019, fund the program for $125,000 for 2019 to continue, with that coming out of the fund balance of the general fund.
Peggy, then Karina.
And since quite a few of the people who get served by the Immigrant Resource Center are not our residents, I suggest we try to get some support for the program from the communities where these people live. It doesn't, because it makes sense to me. We're helping people who live in Denver and all the different places.
They were from all over, yeah.
There's more than one community that benefit from this. And so that's not a direct issue here, except that maybe we can help pay for that and put money back into our money.
Karina, and then Tim.
How much of, so looking at the total cost of this program, how much was the federal grant? Was it 50%? What was the dependency on it?
Exactly 50-50 split, yeah.
The location also changed too, didn't it? I thought they were changing. Oh, out of the library.
Oh, there's, no.
It paid for 2 full-time.
It's for 2 FTEs, yeah. If you look, this is the way you would look at it. When the program first came under the city umbrella about a decade ago, it was, it was originally composed, it was a resource center, and it provided ESL and language partner classes, and then volunteer and student coordination. That was essentially for the language partner component. So those are in the city umbrella. With the addition of the USCIS grant about 6 years ago, allowed us to do the citizenship, and legal services components. And those are really, these are the add-on pieces that we have put into the program in the last few years.
This is a program that would go into the evaluation that we did for the other potential grants, really, is now how we would have to look at this, I think. It's, right? So what I see is us really looking at what our commitment is going to be in January as we commit to many other programs that serve our community. I think where we are right now, though, is we have employees. And is 2019 what you need? I mean, from a cycle perspective, do you need the full year 2019, or can we go 6 months into 2019 and still run the program? I don't know if it's cyclical, seasonal, or...
It really isn't all that cyclical or seasonal. It tends to run on the pattern of the caseload that comes through. So, and those come in on almost on a daily basis. I do think that there's some significant opportunity for us to do both some grant funding and some offsets. And one of the things that I would agree on Peggy's compelling point, because the majority of our clientele for LIRC does come from Littleton, but we've got a substantial body of our applicants that come in from outside the Littleton itself. So I think that helps us. One, if we want to look at a sort of a fee scale that favors our residents, we certainly do that. Our fees are very low because they were tied to the federal grant standards. I think there are also then some opportunities metro-wide for some grants. Foundation's a possibility, I think, that because we serve metro-wide clientele, I think there's some definite possibilities for those. But those will require some prospecting as we move in.
I would recommend that we fund the full year of 2019 coming out of the general fund, but with probably the expectation for staff to come back periodically and update the council about the status of our ability to find grants. I don't want to come at the end of next year and tell you, well, we weren't necessarily successful, or we were. So I think it's one of those that I think we're going to have to update council as over time here, maybe every couple of months or something.
Tim, is this are these legal immigrants, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. And can you give us a little feedback on why you don't think we received that grant this year?
Well, we don't know. It was disappointing. It was a little surprising because we had feedback from our grant officer at USCIS a few weeks ago and said the numbers were all great. They really loved the program, obviously. I mean, we got the grant in 2012 and then had 2 renewals in 2014 and 2016. So Earlene and I talked a little this morning, and we don't know exactly why, and the feds have not responded to our request for why they have, and which is not super surprising. Certainly it's possible that because we had the grant for 3 cycles, they may have decided someone else's turn. Earlene had posed the possibility that given the track record and the success of the program, they may have felt that they had supported to this point, and it was important enough to continue to go into the city's budget. So that's certainly possible. Looking kind of briefly at the list of successful applicants this year, I did notice that there was a significant number of faith-based organizations, more so than there have been in the past. There's always been a component of the successful applicants that were faith-based. I would say that preponderance is significantly greater this year, so that could be direction from the administration. So I guess the answer is we don't really know, but those are possibilities, I think.
This is a really tough situation because there's really no easy answer. I mean, I think there's a clear answer, but it's probably not easy. From this program, this has been funded out of the general fund for a number of years, as you mentioned, and the council really started to push back at one point and said this is not the stuff that should be coming out of a general fund. And I think at some point, and perhaps it will bubble to the surface with priority-based budgeting, but at some point, cities who are struggling with streets, sidewalks, infrastructure, need to make some tough decisions about what type of services they sponsor. We have our own library, we have our own museum, we run free shuttle buses around, and these are great quality of life features that we offer our community, but they're very expensive. And we are struggling with how to pay for core services right now. I don't know though. I think 2018 is easy, but and we'll run around the table on the 2019. But I would say this is the cry that there needs to be an incredibly aggressive grant hunt, and there should have continued to be grant hunting over the years that we had this grant. They stop. It's a problem with grants. They come and they go, and they'll leave you high and dry. And if we want to keep this program running out of here, we need to shore it up a lot better than we have. Obviously, they just kicked it kick the legs right out from underneath us. Interfaith had mentioned to me that part of why they were suffering, they were, in terms of financial, is some of the grants that they had been getting stopped also because of the faith-based groups coming in. And so they're getting the money, maybe we talk to them and find out if they can help us with this. So anyway, my message is this needs to get back out of the general fund and needs to be self-supporting as soon as possible. We're going to make sure everybody's okay with spending that money.
I want to get an understanding of why you're asking for the full year 2019. I think some of the message that we're giving here is it probably doesn't belong in the general fund, so we have to find a way to stand this up on its own. We've been reliant on the grant, but you're asking for a full year and a quarter to get there. Is that because you need that time to stand up maybe some of these other resources? Do you feel that you can do that sooner?
Well, I think we need the time, in large part because of the body of work, and many of you kind of attended the ceremony we had here just a month ago. So I think anything shorter than a year, I just don't think that that's probably in our best interest if you want the program to continue. So can we find other grants aggressively? Absolutely. I believe that's, that would be our mission here. If we don't need to spend all of that money and we find other alternatives to cut short that, absolutely, we would come back and say we don't need to spend all of our general fund money.
Jerry,
if other organizations are going to be doing this, why are we going to do it? If they're going to continue to do it, that's a good thing. But then why are we going to fund it? If we're not needed because of these other organizations.
Well, just to be clear, the other organizations that were grant recipients were not here in Colorado. This was a national grant program. So
we're the only one in Colorado to receive it.
Yeah, we were the only one to receive it in a few years.
We're not the only city that has a resource center for immigration. Can we team up with?
Denver has one, and Aurora has a small one. Englewood has actually has approached us about partnering with us, although what they were going to bring to the table was pretty limited. So, but yeah, I think there's definitely some opportunity for those kind of things too. Well, it's been under the city umbrella for about 10 years now. Before that, it was a local nonprofit, the Littleton Immigrant Initiative. There's another I in there, Littleton Immigrant Integration Initiative, and it was a 501c3 nonprofit and came under the city umbrella about 10 years ago. This program.
How many people do we assist a year? Would you?
Well, it's somewhere north of 500, and I think this year we're actually closer to 750.
Substantial.
When you say assist, because we didn't have that many people coming through at the ceremony.
Right, those were the only ones who had completed their citazenship process. But any given year, we're going to have hundreds of people that are going through that process, and we don't get all of those new citizens that come to the ceremony.
You said it does more than just the citizenship process as well.
Right, yeah, the portion that is funded by the city would be the resource center itself, so providing reference assistance, resource assistance to immigrants who come in to ask about housing or any number of things. The English language classes, English as a second language classes, and the language partner classes, which are the one-on-one conversational classes. And then the volunteer and student coordination, that all comes into the city. And then the citizenship and the legal services components, those were the turnkey pieces that we funded out of the USCIS grant.
We also contributed a tremendous amount of okay, council, is everybody okay with this right now?
Not really.
So we're saying yes to 18 and...
18 18 is cool. We've got
it's
not a budget adjustment, and 2019 it would go into the budget, and it would come out of the reserve.
The bottom line is if we don't fund it, it dies on the vine.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. So, what is our
We lose 2
commitment?
employees, and then no one's running it.
That's terrible.
I like that we didn't get the grant, but I support funding it for 18-19.
I agree. Okay. We're good.
So the last thing is just a recap for the principles of sound financial management. We had a study session on June 5th where we discussed the document. It'll be coming back as a resolution on November 6th. We've added it to the schedule. And essentially we'll incorporate those principles into the adopted budget that we present in December. And then I did make one amendment to what was presented to council on June 5th. I added some information related to the fund balance reserve, just so you're aware of that. It should be redlined in your packet.
Tiffany, does this have to be this long?
Yep. It does.
It's not as bad as the CAFR.
No, it's not, but
It's almost as exciting, though.
It's very important for the city and for the future of the city.
No, I'm not saying it's not important. I agree with the importance of it, but I look at the document, and it's just layer after layer after layer, and we do that with things, and that if it needs to be this big and long, then it does, but
I could create
I don't know how you go back as you're, every day you check and make sure you're, oh yeah, we did 6.2.
I thought it was an excellent report.
Yeah.
Jerry gets the gold star.
Yeah.
Do you want to borrow this?
So wait, no, small.
And a ruler?
All these commitments we're making tonight, does this have to come back to a regular meeting? Because we committed money.
Yeah, we gotta vote on the budget.
Yes.
Yes.
It's come in the next
Absolutely.
couple of meetings, we're gonna have a lot of, it'll be first and second readings on all of them. So it's a bunch. Anything else, Tiffany?
That's all we have for this evening.
I have a couple of updates for the city manager, if I may, Mayor.
No.
Make it quick.
All right.
Go ahead.
So I put on at your desks there, in your space, is a flyer about Let's Go Colorado. And if you looked at the council's tentative calendar, I put on there the opportunity for the council to look for, to adopt a resolution in support of this. This is the ballot issue here for transportation. So this came from CML here not too long ago, so we're letting council consider that. The second piece I want to mention is that the Planning Commission here on Monday night, last night I guess, continued the vacation rental discussion. And so what that means is that it's not going to come to council here for first reading on October 2nd. And so we're going to have to extend the moratorium. And so staff is in the process of trying to decide exactly what that will look like, but I'm going to be recommending to the council that on October 2nd, next week, is the first reading of extending the moratorium. And right offhand, I'm looking at probably 60 days, but we're going to have to figure a strategy between myself, Jocelyn, and Steve Kemp about how we take the feedback, the input from the Planning Commission and move it forward in some form here to the City Council. So that's a heads up, and
I have one question for you.
yes.
So I understand that Sabre passed. So is there going to be any information or something, announcements about that, or and for Sabre?
And I'm sorry, say again?
Sabre, our police dog?
Oh.
Retired dog?
Yes.
Oh, I thought he was talking about.
I'm thinking legislation.
I think it's only fitting. I think the council, I think it's only fitting. Sabre has done a lot for this community over the years. And I think for Officer Kiefer, I think, because he still has, he's his dog. So I think it's a big deal.
It is, and maybe before we retire the dog, one council member could put on the bite suit for one last time.
No, he passed.
Oh, okay.
He passed.
Oh, he did.
He did retire, and he just recently
Well,
died.
Jerry can take on the two new dogs by himself.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, we had the two.
I'm limiting this to Sabre.
I'd be happy.
But I would like some sort of recognition about Sabre.
Absolutely, we'll look at that. Yeah, good point.
Mark, I was listening to the radio, and I was listening to the guy that said, he's putting out the vote, just fund our dam, fix our dam roads, is that what it's called?
That's another ballot motion.
Okay, because I like what that
I
guy
can give you a
said.
quick clarification of the difference between the two. Prop 109 is fix our roads, damn it.
Right.
And 110 is Let's Go Colorado.
Okay.
110 is is a derivative of the state process, and their intent is to raise the sales tax 0.62%, and that would create 20 plus billion dollars over its 20-year lifetime, and they would do revenue anticipation bonds. The first one, 109, is a derivative, and it has a list of projects, and it instructs the legislature that they must take that money, that the number slips from the same $3 billion, and take it out of the general fund with no additional revenue sources.
The argument I was hearing from that gentleman was they have the money, they just want to use it elsewhere. Much like we do.
We are a very unique state where we have constitutional amendments.
So we're not going to have a discussion about ballot issues tonight. This is, we're getting dangerously close. Dangerously close to electioneering. You're talking about this when the camera's in the microphones and it's not in the building. Okay, anybody have anything else? All right, we're adjourned.